We said our nervous system, the central nervous system, which is we refer to it as the brain and the spinal cord. Those are the central nervous system. And we were discussing the brain because it's located in the cranial cavity. And the brain, from the top to the bottom, consists of what structure? From superior to inferior. Your brain is what? What are the structure of the brain? Do you remember?
Exterior is that
Huh?
I'm sorry, I'm
Okay. Do you remember?
I say from the top to the bottom?
From the top to the bottom, from superior to inferior. Did I surprise you? Okay. From superior to inferior, our brain consists of number one, cerebrum. Number two, what you see over here in, what color is that? Orange. Is diencephalon. And you go further down, more inferior, you're going to see what? Brainstem. And then cerebellum. So those are the four parts of what? Of your brain. What we talked about last week was the cerebrum and the diencephalon. For today, we're going to talk about the brainstem and cerebellum. And we're going to finish by talking about the blood vessels that supply your brain, the venous drainage, and the cranial nerve. And you guys are done with the first region of your body. So, basically, this is your brain stem, which is big. It's the same as here. And your brain stem is located on the most inferior portion. A continuation of your brain stem further down is what? Is your spinal cord. So, at the level of the end of the brain stem is the big hole in your occipital bone, the one we call it foramen
Magnum.
That's me. I am talking about this. So that's the way it is. And then continuation further is I'm sorry, your spinal cord. So based on that, there are three structures. Your brainstem consists of three structures, starting from the most superior toward the inferior. Number one is midbrain. Number two, pons. Number three, medulla. They are all connected by neuronal tissue. And we call that neuronal tissue tegmentum. Tegmentum. So you can see over here how is the tegmentum connecting those three all together. So what's the major function of our brainstem? It's a station for all stimulus. That means any stimulus comes from the cortical area, it has to stop where? At my brainstem. It doesn't work without it. And of course, the stimulus will be transmitted from the cortex to the brainstem and further down to your spinal cord. And then the stimulus exits my spinal cord through the spinal nerve to give specific function. The brainstem is located just anterior to what? To my cerebellum and inferior to my cerebrum. Also, it is in continuation with the encephalons. Let's talk about the midbrain. What you need to remember, on each part of your brainstem, there is landmark, anatomical landmark that you're gonna point on those landmarks in your image. The first one, which is belonging to the midbrain, is corpora quadrigemina. The corpora quadrigemina is this part. So this is the thalamus, which is the last part of your diencephalon. If I move towards inferior, meaning moving toward inferior, I'm gonna see my midbrain, and the structure of my midbrain that I can see imaging wise is corpora quadrigemina, and the corpora quadrigemina consists of 4 nuclei. Do you guys know what's nuclei? Why you have to ask me if you don't know something. If I'm saying something you don't know, you need to ask me. Otherwise, I'll assume that you guys know, and I keep moving further. Anybody knows what is nuclei?
No.
How about ganglia? Good that I asked. You guys remember when you learn anatomy is, that's your neuron cells, correct? And any neuron cells consist of the body of the cells, the short extension. We call them, what do we call those short extensions? Dendrites, correct. And the long extension, we call it axon. And those coming out of the axon, we call it terminal axon, where they do the synapse. Now, in our brain, we have collection of neuron cells, body with the dendrites, not axon. You see how they are connected? A bunch of neuron body without an axon, if they are located anywhere in my brain or my spinal cord, then we're gonna call it nuclei. If it's located outside central nervous system, that's me, they're not located neither in my brain, neither in my spinal cord, then we call it what? Ganglia. And what their function basically? Those are station, like the bus station. To understand, I move, I contract my biceps muscles. The stimulus come from where?
Brain.
From the brain. Cortical area, your frontal lobe, where is the motor function. Goes down to where? All the way to the spinal cord. Now, before reaching the spinal cord, there are several nuclei where they have what? The stimulus to stop, make station, and then stop, and then stop, and then stop. And then will exit through the spinal nerve and reach where? So basically all those nuclei are what? Bus station. Imagine yourself taking the bus from here to San Diego. The bus has what? Stations. Stop. That's the same. The opposite way is the sensory stimulus that comes from outside. When enter my spinal cord, it has to make station in a ganglia because it's outside. And then moving further until reaching the cortical area for sensory stimulus to be interpreted, that means it has to stop at those nuclei too. So that's the difference between the word nuclei and ganglia, okay? Collection of neuronal cell body located inside the central nervous system. You're gonna call it nuclei. Collection of neuronal cell body located outside of the central nervous system, we call it ganglia. So I'm seeing two large nuclei on my midbrain, and they give them a name. Superior colliculus, inferior colliculus, and both together represent the corpora quadrigemina, or you can call them dictum, the way they call it right now. So those can be seen imaging-wise, and we'll point on them later on. What's their function? The superior colliculi can contain the visual center that coordinate your eye movement. To understand it, when you move your head, where is the eye move? To the opposite side, correct? You did it yourself, or it is a reflex that is done by itself. You guys got the point? This is controlled by the superior colliculi. In return, your inferior colliculi, it is used by vestibuloacoustic nerve for sensory stimulus to stop before reaching my interpretation area of the hearing. So any hearing has to stop in my inferior colliculi before reaching the cortex to be interpreted. Loud or soft voice. Question? No question. There is always a connection between our brain parts, even if we divide them in cerebrum, the encephalon, cerebellum, and brainstem. Those are separated parts, we say. But there is always what? A connection. A bridge that connects the cerebrum with brainstem. We call it peduncles, cerebral peduncles, meaning any stimulus coming from my cortical area, brain, has to move through that peduncle to reach where? The brainstem. There's more bridges. We will talk about them later on. They belong to the cerebellum, but this is the only one that connects the midbrain and the cerebral hemisphere. Within the cerebral peduncle of the midbrain, we have two specialized nuclei structures. We call them substantia nigra and red nuclei. Why they call it substantia nigra? Because it looks dark imaging-wise. Why they call it red nuclei? Because it looks a little bit pinky. So basically you can distinguish between those two imaging-wise just based on the color. What are the function of those? The substantia nigra is responsible for